Listen to the All in My Head podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Please, allow me to show you something.
Welcome to the All in My Head podcast. I'm Jenny, and I am your host, and you are here for season 2, and this is episode 2. And the episode is called The Inner Voice, A Medium's Journey to Speaking Her Truth with Nancy Weiss. And I want to give you a little background about Nancy. Nancy is a spirit baby psychic medium, Reiki master, and spiritual coach. She helps women connect with souls of their babies before pregnancy and guides them to trusting their intuition and their spiritual connection on their journey to motherhood. Her own experience in becoming a first-time mother at the age of 42 via embryo adoption and communicating with her daughter before pregnancy was the catalyst to share the sacred work with others. And I'm so excited to have Nancy here as my very first guest on season 2. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much. It's wild to hear my bio because I'm like, oh my goodness, that sounds so cool.
You are cool.
I do it.
You are so cool. Like, give yourself credit. Like,
you're cute. Thank you.
This is the era we're in. We're in, like everyone has their Taylor Swift era of some sort. We're in our era of like stepping into our coolness.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
Let's
thank you so much.
That.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being my very first guest. I feel like this is a great way to step into this season because the reason I started my podcast was because I wanted to start speaking my truth and not be stifled. So when we got to sit down, we talked a little bit about how, we weren't able to do that necessarily from the start. So I just want to start with, before we get into the nitty gritty of that, because that's going to be good stuff, how, or let's say when was the first time that you knew you had this intuitive divine gift, and what was that like? Because it sounds amazing.
It started really young for me, and I started, I think, first off with psychic abilities. And I don't know if I heard about it somewhere back in the 80s. People talked about ESP. They're like, "Oh, what do you have? ESP? Can you read my mind?" And I heard this, and I wound up. I think it was I had a friend's mom who was into crystals and tarot cards, and I'd go to her house and she'd kind of low key be like, "Oh, you're interested in this? Okay." Of course, I'm sure she didn't want to overstep bounds, but I was kind of really all about it. And I remember there being an ad in the back of a magazine where you would send in $1.99 check for a book.
So great.
Or a book like learn how to read minds. And I actually still have a copy of the book, and it's
no way.
Yes, it's all yellowed, but it's called David St. Clair's Lessons in ESP. And on the top of the book, it says psychic healing, psychometry, astral travel, regression into past lives, casting a spell to get anything you desire, aka manifestation, and a whole new world of psychic powers. Well, I think I was between 8 and 11. This is what I was reading. This is what I was devouring. And I was like, oh, manifestation. Oh, well, I didn't know it was called that. Astral travel. Let me go visit my friends in their house. Let me test my psychic abilities. Where, it give you all these examples to help your intuition, to help your psychic abilities.
Right.
And I remember actually did it in class one time, in middle school, where I had I had a bunch of cards, and I was like, you hold up the card and I'm going to tell you what it is. And I stood up in the front of the class and I was like, Queen of Hearts. And they were like, yes. And I'm like, 3 of Spades. And I got to 3 of them, and everyone was like, whoa.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So that's where like it kind of started with that. And that's when then spirit started to come in
Okay.
around that same time.
So you were very young when this all came about for you. And we did talk a little bit about kind of, you know, like the era that we grew up in because we're around the same age. We're only a couple years apart. Welcome to the 50 Club. It's great. But we talked a little bit about this, how it was, I don't know if it was just our era, but also religion played a big part in that, in not talking about these things and not being open about it. The first thing I want to ask you, and then I'll segue to that, is did it scare you at all? Or were you just like, this is so cool?
I don't think I was ever scared. I just was like, I can't get enough of this. This is amazing. I think I did get scared when some things came up with a child that had passed away, but I had already had like this premonition dream about her. I remember her name was Baby Hope. I remember the whole thing, but I remember seeing her and waking my mom up either from nap or sleeping. I don't remember how old I was, but I was like, Mom, like, wake up. I have to tell you something. I just saw the girl on TV that I dreamt about last night and how she died. And that really was like that was scary because
Right.
it's another kid passing, dying in a terrible way. That was really the only time that I was kind of like scared. Mostly though, I was wowed. I was just like, this is crazy. Like, this is wild. People be
Right.
like, how do you know that? And I'm like,
Right.
I don't know. I just know, so I think that was really, really it when it comes to like having those feelings around it though.
Yeah. And I know that, especially my mom, who she didn't talk about it publicly, obviously, or at all outside of the home, and not even to my dad. She wouldn't talk to him about it either. But she definitely had a lot of premonitions, and I feel like she also was able to kind of understand her dreams in a different way and know that if she dreamt about this, that might mean death, and if she dreamt about this, it meant a joyful event. So she did talk somewhat about that. And I definitely had a lot of those things where I think back then you'd say deja vu, it was deja vu, or whatever the case may be. But I didn't talk about it a lot. And I definitely wasn't going to talk about it in public because I was raised Catholic. And I talked a little bit about that journey and, Jesus and Buddha and crystals episode, but it was very taboo to talk about these things. And I think that in that, for me, when I had these types of visions or whatever, or dreams, a lot of things came to me in dreams. I was scared because we were taught that it was this bad thing and that, you were dealing with black magic or dabbling with the devil and all these crazy things that, and again, to each his own, everyone has their own belief or religious belief and background. But as I grew up, I was kind of like, these are things that are important for us to know and to be connected with. And, and so again, I was glad to get in and to start meeting people who also had this same thought process. But that took a while for you to step into this, right? Because this wasn't your first career, or this wasn't even your first kind of stepping into the business of spirit.
Correct. So I grew up, right? I guess I was like, just having a fun time, where it would happen. I'd be like, hey, did somebody just call and their name is Robert? And, I would know what people were calling about and things like that. Then as I got a little bit older, that's when the spirit baby thing started. That's when I kept connecting with children and pregnancy. So babies that had passed away, miscarriages, or women that were pregnant. But like I didn't even know about it. And I always tell this story, like I was meeting my dad's wife for the first time. It was Thanksgiving. We were headed to her sister. So she had like 5 sisters. We're headed to like her sister's house, right? I never meet the woman before. I just know her name. I get in the car, and the minute I get in the car, I think I was like, I feel like I was 20 at this point. I feel like I was maybe 20 years old. I get into the car and I say to her randomly, "Is your sister pregnant?" First of all, I don't know why anybody would like say this to somebody. And she was like, "No." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Well, I have to say, you're Italian,
I know.
right? I'm Puerto Rican. And I think sometimes we just say things like we're not saying it because we're being mean. It's just kind of like,
No.
we're like, we're talkers. And also, if something comes up, I'm like, I don't want to forget. I want to ask this question.
Yes.
So it wasn't out of malice in any way.
No. And from being from the North, we're pretty blunt. So we just kind of tell it how it is.
Yeah.
But I just get this feeling like that there's her sister is pregnant. I don't know any of them, including her, right? So she's like, no, we get to Thanksgiving. We're all like, whatever, 15 of us at a big table. Everyone's enjoying their meal. And the sister that was hosting gets a phone call from the other sister. And in a couple of minutes later, she comes in the room. She's like, oh my God, guess what, everybody? Joanne is pregnant. And I was like, who's Joanne? And they were like, oh, that's our sister.
Wild.
But my dad and his then, girlfriend didn't really respond. Like no one, I don't think, made a connection except me. And I was just sitting there like, wow,
Yeah, that was solidified it for you.
Yeah. So it was between like 17 and 20 is where I started getting more connection with the spirit babies, feeling my own spirit baby, or not even knowing it was a spirit baby, just feeling like I could see my daughter. And I saw Luna, who's my daughter now, who is 7. I saw her back then.
Wow.
And I was like, why do I have a daughter that's like blonde kind of hair and blue eyes? I'm Sicilian. I have dark brown hair, dark eyes.
Right.
I assume I'm going to marry somebody that's dark hair, dark eyes, or the person I was with was Puerto Rican at the time. We wouldn't make a blonde baby, a blonde blue-eyed baby, So that was interesting. And then that's when I started then another time I was always meeting these new people, meeting a boyfriend's mom for the first time in their house in Brooklyn. And I'm going up the stairs and I feel like this whoosh go through my body. And I'm like, whoa, what was that? I said, oh, that's it. I just knew. I was like, this is a baby girl. And this is a baby girl that belonged to her and was miscarried. And of course I go upstairs, or I think I asked him, I said, hey, who does this? Did you lose a baby? Did you miscarry a baby girl? And everyone was like, whoa, yes.
Especially in that age again, because people didn't talk about miscarriage.
I know. And then they were like, yes, I did. Wow. And I was like, well, she's still here and she's with you.
Oh my gosh.
But that's where it started. And then that all went dormant for maybe not the psychic abilities, but the spirit stuff became dormant until I was about 40 years old.
And see, we've walked these similar paths, but I would say I started having my kids very early. I was married right out of high school. I mean, I left home when I was 17, moved in with my husband's family, graduated. We got married very young. And I had my first son at 19. But I also know that I, not only intuitively, like I definitely, where people call it that gut feeling. My middle son and my youngest are very in tune like that. My middle, he just knows, like if he likes someone or not, and he can't really tell you what, and he's always on point. Where my youngest son, I would say, is more intuitive. But I always had that intuition piece, but the visualization, was very early on for me too, or having these dreams. I mean, I have my 2 oldest were when they were young, blonde hair, light hair, green eyes, almost like borderlining on blue, which is my husband's side of the family. My husband's light haired, light eyed. And, in between, there's 5 years in between my first and second son, and I had a miscarriage in between. And then there's 2.5 years between my second and third. but I visualized, I knew when I was pregnant, and I don't even think I was pregnant yet. I would say my husband's grandfather passed, and before he passed, he was in hospice. We knew he was dying that day, and we were with him. And he said, "You're going to have one more." And I said, "Yeah, no, we're not having another child because Dan doesn't, we're done too." And he was like, "No, you're going to have one more." And I was like, "No, okay. What are you going to say? Someone's dying there." And I just held his hand and I said, "Okay." Now, little did I know I was pregnant at the time. I mean, probably like a minute pregnant. But I very visually dreamt Bennett, my youngest son, and he was dark hair and dark eyed. And I even saw him in this little green suit, and we were walking into an event of some sort. And I never told anybody that except for my husband. And when we were coming up with his name, it was a very weird thing. We were watching The Deep End of the Ocean, the movie, and the little boy who goes missing is this dark-haired, dark-eyed boy. And it just, for some reason, it just resonated so heavily with me. And I said to my husband, I'm like, "Gosh, we have to name him Ben, but maybe a variation of," and that's where we came up with his name. But I'm telling my husband that, he was like, "That's crazy." And, the whole 9 yards. He's like, "Yeah, we'll see. Like the other two are light haired." Sure enough, you know, fast forward a couple years, my sister's getting married and I have Bennett and he is this dark haired, dark eyed boy, but I never told her. And she didn't have him in the wedding, but she wanted him to come afterwards. And she bought him this little mint green suit, and he comes walking in the same way. And I lost it. Like, I'm at the wedding, like sobbing, and everybody's like, "I know, he's cute." And I was like, "No, you have no idea."
Oh my gosh.
No idea. And it was very, again, it solidified that for me. But again, I was in my 20s and I was still Catholic and I was still all the things. So it very much was something that my husband and I looked at each other and were like, "What?" Like, but we didn't, I didn't like tap into that in any way again until further along.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I love it. I love those kind of stories.
I love that. And I love that you decided to kind of pursue this further. And maybe, and again, we've talked about this, like, you change as you get older, and you start to not think like, what is everybody going to say? But you were definitely in a different field, like working out in the public sector, correct?
Yeah, that was in human resources for like 15 years in benefits, payroll numbers, but I always was spiritual. So I was always on doing manifestation. Manifestation was huge for me. Always practicing that, making things happen, making it happen. My crystals, all those things. I was always holding on to meditation, grounding and doing my spiritual practices. And then it was when we were getting into our fertility journey after I got married, that I then quit my job to become a health coach, which I had went to school for.
Right.
A health coach is, helping people eat better, different things like that. And then when I realized that I was going through the fertility issues, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to become a fertility health coach. And so I was telling, that's what I was doing. I was working, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, doing posts and all about being healthy with fertility. And it was good, right? Like, take your supplements, do this. And then I started I was like, you know what? I'm a Reiki master. I had this calling. I really needed to become a Reiki master. And I was like, I think I'm going to start doing a little bit different here. Now, we're going to talk about the stuff, the energy healing,
right?
The mindset, the manifestation about fertility. And I was like, so it kept morphing into this new thing. So then I was like a spiritual fertility coach, and it kind of kept changing. And then because I'm in the industry, we'll call it, right, of fertility, I learned about the book Spirit Babies by Walter McKitchen. And I was like, Spirit Babies, what is this?
Which you had been doing long before, you just didn't call it that.
Know it. this is where it all came together. Like I literally find her name is Kelly Meehan. I'm gonna call her the original spirit baby medium. That I found on Instagram, and I saw her post and I was like, oh my God, spirit babies. Like this is a thing. I've done this before.
Right.
And then I read the book and then I say, all right, I'm going to do this on me. I'm going to connect with I'm going through all this IVF and stuff like that.
Right.
I'm going to connect with my spirit baby and see what happens. And that's how Luna, like I started to connect with Luna. And then through all this, I was doing psychic energy healing for fertility.
Okay.
And then one day I said, if I'm doing the spirit baby, well, why can't I do someone else's spirit babies?
Right. Because you had already
yes.
connected in the past.
Yeah. And so I think I'm in 9 years now of doing that professionally.
Wow. And so when you decided to kind of take that move and leave kind of that human resource field and being out in the world and working for other people, obviously husband was supportive.
Oh yeah.
But were other people supportive, like family and friends, or did they get it?
So I don't think I told anybody. I was afraid to tell my own followers. You know what I mean? Here I am like on Facebook with my private Facebook group of fertility people. I have, Instagram. And I remember, and it's hard to think back because it's 9 years now. I remember being so scared to even talk about like energy healing. I was scared I had all these women following me. And now all of a sudden I'm going to tell them, by the way, you can talk to your baby who hasn't, you're not pregnant, but they're in the spirit world and you can talk to them. I'm like, they're going to think I'm nuts. And then you have like that feeling of being burnt at the stake kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Which definitely affects me. Not as much, but I work through that and I'm still working through it, which we'll talk about. But that scariness of like, I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be judged for this thing. And there are some people I remember like putting it out there and I remember like losing followers and I was like, oh my God, this is so scary. But then all the people that were then following me because they were like, oh yes, this is a thing. How incredible is this? Is like a whole new way to make a woman feel peace and relief and hope on her fertility journey by connecting with their baby.
And I love that because, and I love what you said is that you kind of had to take that leap of faith and saying, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And I feel that similarly with my podcast, I've talked about a lot of different things and even kind of my journey with religion and my spirituality and how much it has changed. And I knew that people would, especially family who are still Catholic or who still follow a specific religion or who believe in a specific way, would definitely have things to say. And then in talking about trauma, similarly. And these were things I think, like we've said, the past 5-10 years, that mindset has changed so drastically in how we don't want to keep those things in, right? We were raised in that era of, be seen, not heard. We don't tell people our business. And I did it because I needed it to be out there. I needed to be free of it and I needed to speak on it because it's my truth. So I had just decided, and I think coming of age and coming into my 50 years and just going, I don't care anymore. And not in a mean way, but I don't care what other people think. This is my truth. This is my journey. And maybe it'll resonate with somebody else. But even if it doesn't, it's helping me. And the feedback that I got was so positive from people and saying, wow, like, first of all, family that I grew up with or friends of the family who said, yeah, we saw that and we recognize that. And even some like, sorry that we didn't step in or sorry that we couldn't have helped in a different way, was so validating. And also just that somebody else resonated with a story is huge. So I love that you said, like, I don't care. I'm going to put it out there in this specific way. And if it touches somebody, then I did the right thing.
Yeah. And I knew that it was working because I connected with my own daughter and then I gave birth to her. You know what I mean? And I had all these little things along the way of like all these incredible signs and things that I would share with women, and just trying to teach them how to be able to do the same thing, with their spirit baby. Um, but again, like going back to telling people about stuff, um, like as of today, my in-laws don't know what I do. They
Interesting.
like I think my husband's dad jokes or my husband's dad, yeah.
Yeah.
He jokes around about Reiki. Cause I finally did tell him, I was like, oh, I do something Reiki. And he's like, oh, how's the Ricky Racky Reiki going? I'm like, it's good. It's real good. Does he know I'm a medium? No, I don't believe so. Neither does my mother-in-law. Because
Interesting.
that conversation doesn't come up. Nothing comes up like that. And I don't offer it. And
Again, it's that that age group, right? That age group of people who are just like, yeah, we don't have to get into all the personal business or whatever. And I even remember having Reiki done when I worked in a hospital. Like, I think I only had my first son, and we had a practitioner come in who worked on people who worked there, but also anyone who was open to receiving that. And I remember having it done the first time, and I just was all about talking about it. And anybody that I talked, this was, my son's 30, he'll be 33 this year. He was 2. So we're talking 31 years ago. And everybody was like, oh, that's brujeria and that's magic. And we don't talk about that. And I was just like, wow, well, something great happened to me. And I felt such a release and such an amazing feeling. And I also feel like for me, it happened after I had a miscarriage, and I needed it, and I didn't know I needed it. Right. So this person came in and was just happened to be there. I was working and just going through the motions of living and not really grieving that or releasing that or accepting anything, just feeling guilty, as women do, that you did something wrong and that your body just, is not going to do what it's supposed to do for you. So I was so excited to talk about it, and nobody wanted to hear it. Everybody's like, I don't want to know about that. That's scary. We don't talk about those things. So yeah, that's interesting that even some people that in your own family or, immediate family don't know.
Yeah, no, they don't know what I do. I mean, you'd have to pretty much, I do talk a little bit on Facebook, but not everyone's on Facebook, right? But like on Instagram, no one's following. So no one hears me or sees me talk about it. And again, it's probably feels taboo, but also that I'm not believed, that people, like they'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? You can't talk to dead people. And that's that's a whole other thing too. So there's the spirit baby stuff, but then there's also the regular mediumship, that has flourished within the last year.
And do you feel like that's just because you've been more open to it and kind of like in receiving it, that it's kind of morphed a little bit, or has it always been there and it's just...
It was always there, but I didn't allow it to fully come in. I always, for some weird reason, for literally since I'm in my 30s, I said that I would save being a medium until I was 50. I was like, when I'm 50, I'll do it. When I'm 50, I'll do it. I don't know why, but that's just what I always told myself. And then finally last year, I was like, okay, Nancy, it's time to start,
Yeah, spirit is calling and I need to answer the phone.
Right. Yeah. But that's even scarier to talk about. That still is also scary to talk about. I feel like the spirit baby stuff is easier to talk about because it's babies that haven't been born yet. It's very sweet.
Right.
Other stuff is it's different. You know what I mean? And again, people will be like, you can't talk to the dead, So
yes, you can. Well, and that's a whole other subject. Yeah. But it's interesting. Before we moved here from Connecticut, so 5.5 years ago, and maybe even a year or more before that, we hadn't told anybody we were moving. We hadn't told a soul. Like, it was kind of our little thing. And we're like, and I'm all about manifesting. And I'm like, if it's supposed to happen, it's going to be organic. It's going to happen. Put our house on the market, quietly, like nobody knew about it. And I encouraged my husband to come see a psychic with me. And, he went in very like, and I'm just like, just give it a shot. And, when she said certain things, and it was very interesting because she focused on him first. And we've since talked to her many times. But she knew what we were coming, like we were moving, like she knew about a broken window in the house that needed to be fixed. That was, causing kind of an uproar with the person who was, looking to buy the home. And why wouldn't you fix the window? And like, she just said certain things. And then when she narrowed in on his grandmother and talking about her and how she passed and certain things and making this connection, he was literally like grabbing my thigh, like, what is going on right now? And down to like and my mom and dad are still alive, but even talking about them, and she had the tone of my mother's voice so perfectly that my husband, like, he almost fell out of his chair. That he was just like, she was like going, Sammy, like the way she would say it even. And he just looked at me and he's like, this is nuts. Like, crazy. And I think that was a big thing. He wasn't necessarily like a person who didn't believe, but he didn't have he grew up Catholic as well, altar boy. He didn't have anybody to kind of say, "Ooh, is this real or is this not real?" And then when we told his mom, she wanted to know everything, and she was very Catholic growing up and all the things, but she wanted to know it all. And she was so fascinated. And then there were things that we weren't even sure about, and she validated.
Wow.
And that was kind of our first, like, and again, this was 5.5, like we'll say 7.5 years ago, that we were both like, you know what, this is real. And we were getting some amazing guidance and validation that our move here was right. And yeah, all the good things that were coming our way.
I love it.
Yeah.
There's so much out there. You know what I mean? There's just so much out there. But it's definitely scary sometimes to be in the position of being a practitioner.
Right.
And what I've experienced, like with my mom, and that's one of the big things, is that she was always supportive. Pretty much, even as a child, I'd be like, Mommy, I knew this or I knew that. And she'd be like, oh, okay. Oh, wow. She always was just open to it. And then she had a personal change in religion for herself. And that caused her in the last 5.5 or for a long time to then become completely against my work. And that was one of the hardest times I've had over the last 10 years,
right,
is having my mom tell me that I'm talking to the devil, that these babies or whatever people are the devil, that I'm being tricked, that I should not be doing this. It's only meant for, she would send me Bible verses of what I was doing, and I that she wasn't proud of me. And that those things were so hard to think, like, my own mom is not proud of the work that I do, that she's not recognizing how happy I am in finding something that comes very naturally for me. It's what
because it's your gift. It's your divine purpose.
Right. It's what I'm meant to do. And so that shift was so hard over the last, and again, I've been doing this 9 years. She only has recently come around. So that's the thing. She did have another change, which is interesting. Now, I don't know why. I can't tell you why this has happened. But she became accepting again and told me that my gift was, a gift from God. And so I went from being like, just like so, not scared, but just so upset that she was so against what I was doing. And I couldn't even talk to her. I couldn't even tell her, like, oh, I'm going to work today. Because I could feel on the other side of the phone.
You could feel the judgment.
I could feel her just clam up and get quiet. And
Right.
it was horrible because it also then transferred of how I felt about what I was doing
Mhm.
to other people.
Right.
Meaning like meeting the neighbor, meeting my daughter's, mom, the friends of, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the
The
school
daughters,
moms.
the
The
moms,
school
yeah,
moms.
the
Yeah.
moms, the school moms,
Yeah.
when like again, you're at a birthday party and the kids are playing and you're talking, oh hey, what do you do? What do you do? And the feeling that I just was like, again, that feeling of being burnt at the stake, right? Of
Right.
thinking, is this person Christian? Are they extremely Christian, especially in the South, where they're going to be very against this? Are they
Exactly.
going to be open minded? Do I even tell them, or do I lie? Do I just say, oh, yeah, I stay at home with the kids, I take care of the kids?
Right.
Or do I like kind of get a vibe off this person and then be like, yeah, I'm an energy healer, which
Mhm.
I am, but that's not what I truly do.
Right. You were, to be
Yeah.
vague just to see if they were going to
Right.
accept
Like,
that. Right.
right.
Or
Testing
how
the
they were going to
waters.
receive it.
Right. So you have to be, oh, yeah, I know what Reiki is. Or, oh, no, I don't know what that is at all. And
Mhm.
I've lost, they weren't friends to begin with, but
Right.
I
Right.
lost connections. And I know it's because of that. I know it's because of that.
Right.
So it's been challenging. It's been hard, but I think with my mom coming back around again to be accepting of what I do has now helped me again in my personal life of, you
Mhm.
know what? Because I feel it just all coincides. When she was
Absolutely.
feeling like that, I was more nervous about saying anything anyway, because I just felt
Right.
like I was horrible, like not a
Right.
good person. And then to be able to now be like, this is what I do, and you have a lot of, it's just, it's going to happen. What's going to happen is going to happen. Person's
Yeah.
either going to say, and it's usually a woman, she's either going to be like, oh my God, that's crazy. Oh, I
Right.
knew I was going to have a boy. And then you start this whole conversation,
Right.
or it's going to go opposite. Then they're just going to be like, oh, no, I don't know what that is, but that person's not meant for me then,
And that's the big thing. I think it's, words matter. And, I was also, I was kind of raised in that environment that, I don't have the talent. I'm not going to be good at whatever I want to do. And, just to kind of stick to raising my kids and being a mom and doing the safe thing, make money, provide for your family, and do that. And I did. I worked, a lot of jobs, but I worked most recently for 20 years in the public education system. And I did that, and I was I'm grateful. I was available for my kids, and I was available to be there for all the things that they were involved in. And I had 3 boys, so they were involved in all the sports and doing all the things, and were super busy, but I also never felt that, anything that I wanted to do outside of working for someone else was going to be received well. And I was told that over and over and over again. And even as an adult, that sticks in your head, because words matter. And if your, immediate bubble of people who are supposed to support you and love you for unconditionally aren't giving it to you, then surely you're not going to want to do it for yourself. But I was the opposite with my kids. I was like, go for whatever you want to do it. I'll take you to every audition if you want to be an actor, and I'll, support that you want to jump out of planes if you want, whatever you want to do, I'm going to support it, but I wasn't being true to myself because those words were there. And, I talked about it in most of my episodes, but it was that era of people pleasing too. Like you wanted people to be happy. You wanted to make sure that they were happy, but you sacrificed your own happiness in the process.
Mhm.
And, it wasn't until like my 40s that I finally started to go, yeah, no, like that's your hang up. And even moving from Connecticut to come here and to pursue the different passions that we have and pursue a different life than we lived. Even friends were like, Yeah, I don't know. That's not a great idea. You're leaving behind a pension. You're leaving behind, whatever. You're leaving
Yeah.
behind a good, secure job. Um, and that was hard. But again, a lot of those connections I don't have anymore. Right. And there are people when I moved who stayed connected and who checked in and who wanted to, and then others who didn't. So that just tells you who your people are.
Yeah.
Like you said, then they weren't for me if that's going to be their reaction
Yeah.
because this is your truth. This is who
Yeah.
you are, so why sugarcoat it for other people?
Yeah. I think it's hard though too, because it's different from our online community because you're
Mhm.
obviously online, you're going to find the people that you love and
Right.
have this connection with, which is awesome. But a lot of them are like, don't even live in the same state. And
Right.
I'm like, why can't this woman just live here? So we can get
Right.
together. So it can be lonely at times. It definitely can be lonely at
For
times
sure.
to feel that way. I worry too. Sometimes I have worried about it trickling down to my kids. Like if I tell the mom this, how are they going to treat my daughters? Are
Right.
they going to then treat how like what's going to happen there?
Right.
Or my husband coaches for a high school track team, and you have a lot of kids that are religious, and I don't have a problem with that,
Sure.
obviously. But he knows all the parents, and here he's like, am I going to tell this person what she does for real,
Right. Because
instead
it's
of
going to
making
affect.
right,
Yeah.
instead of just kind of like sugarcoating it, I guess. But he has actually seemed more confident talking about me and what
Mm.
I do to other people than me. And I'm like, hey, you gotta give me a minute. Like,
Yeah, you're right. I'm trying to get
yeah,
there, but
yeah,
yeah.
like, right. But they already know what I do. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess he told him,
Mhm.
So it's like ripping the band aid off.
And
And then
maybe that's
again,
helpful for you, like it's kind of hard and helpful at the same
supportive.
time.
It's very supportive. And I know I'm like, all right, well, he's not worried. Not worried about it. And he's
Mhm.
100% for me. My husband is not a spiritual person. He never was. He really didn't believe in his atheist when I met him.
Mhm.
Still kind of is. I feel over the years and all the stuff that he has heard me do and, mediumship sessions where I'm like, oh my God, their mom said this or all these
Right.
things. And he's like, I know Nancy's not lying to me, so it
Mhm.
has to be like kind
Real.
of true.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's very supportive. So it's so good to have that person that believes in me and what I do and thinks he's like, you're always doing such an amazing job. And it feels so good to have that person say that, especially in this type of work,
Right.
because it's not, nothing wrong with being an accountant, right? That's a
Right. But we're
normal,
not
regular
accountants.
job. Like, it's like,
Nobody wants me doing their taxes either. Yes.
but what I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
it's just so different what I do. It's really different.
And I think it's
You know?
important that and special that you have a partner who supports you in that. And I think that was a huge thing for me. My husband went to culinary school after we got married and we had a little one, and I was very supportive of that and all of his journeys. And he worked a million hours when he first started, and I was the one who was at home taking care of the kids. And now in this second half of our lives, we say he's just super supportive. And so are my kids. Like we're in very different journeys in that way, where you have young ones and I have kids who are grown and have kids of their own. But talking to my kids and their significant others, they're my biggest cheerleaders. They're the ones who are like, oh, do it, mom. Like, we love that for you, and my husband saying, yeah, start a podcast, write a book, do all the things that you said you were always going to do, because who's stopping you? And again, this was in a lot of therapy too, where, my therapist was like, that is not your voice telling you to not do it and that you're not
Mhm.
good. So stop letting other people live in your mind rent free.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we're lucky and blessed that we have these partners and these little people in our lives. Mine aren't so little because they're all bigger than me, but they're my little people. And they're so supportive, and they are like cheering me on every podcast episode, or, when I'm going to be teaching a class coming up soon, and I'm launching and, publishing my first book, and they're just like, yay, go you.
Yeah.
And that's important. I think when other people are telling you no, you kind of need to make your circle smaller and keep it with the people who are cheering you on.
Yeah, definitely. I also don't like hide anything. Obviously, I don't hide anything from the girls, so whatever they want to tell somebody when somebody says, "What did your mommy do?" I'm like,
Go
no.
for it.
Yeah, seriously,
Right.
Because it's the truth. It's the truth.
Yeah.
And how long are you going to spend not being truthful about yourself, or, me being truthful about myself? Because you just have to let things, again, people will fall away. People will not believe,
Right.
whatever, but having that is like honoring what you know to be true, honoring the gifts that you have, abilities, whatever you want to call them. We're not here long enough to be hiding shit. We gotta let it out, so.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
that's what makes this culture of ours. And I speak a little bit, and I've spoken a little bit about that in my last episode in season 1, but how this culture, especially in the United States, right, is about judging people. And it's so unhealthy for us, right?
Yeah.
It's not healthy for our physical health if we're not feeling like we're being truthful and being who we're, authentically meant to be. But it's also such a strain on our mental health when we're kind of living in this, these two dichotomies, these two worlds of this is what I'll present and this is who I really am.
Yeah.
And, and I think that that's such an inner struggle, as a society, that we just look at people for, what they do, how much they make, how successful they are, how many degrees they have. That's what our society says. This is the person, and this is is the American dream. And why isn't our American dream doing what we love? Whether we're rolling in money and 16 houses and all the things, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Right.
Yeah. True. Yeah. I mean, I love what I do. And, the next step for me is to really put the mediumship out there as well as a second branch in my business. But it's still scary. Again, spirit baby psychic medium, that already sounds kind of wild, right? But for me, evidential medium sounds like it's another next step that I'm going to have to take. Just like when I did that, people know that I do it, right? I do sessions for free right now. Because I'm still honing my craft with that. It's very detailed. It's again it's all about evidence. It's not just your grandmother's here and she loves you.
Right. Because anybody can say
had a yellow car, and it's deeper than that. And so I'm still always honing that. But yeah, really, then
I would be happy to offer my services to you.
Okay, next, good. All right.
Yeah, I would love to support that for you.
Yes. So it's the next step for me.
Right.
And again, it comes with those same butterflies of oh my God, really.
But butterflies are good.
Yeah, it's really.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Really say this. Am I really going to do it? Am I really going to, put myself out there, which I have in the last year. I have posted, for me, it's posting on Facebook about sessions that I had. But let me tell you, doing that the first time really scared the crap out of me. I was I can't believe people are going to be like, Nancy can't really do that, or, you know what I mean? And then what I wind up doing though, too, is letting my proof or whatever have to equal my worth, what I do. And that's a whole other thing. You know what I mean? When you do this type of work. So it's intense, but this is my life's path. And I know this from literally a little girl. At 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, I used to say, I want to be a medium. I want to talk. That's what I want to do. I want to be a medium.
Right.
And
Because that
like,
was what was put on your heart from
yes,
the beginning.
yes. And
Right.
so to have it happen, you know what I mean, is just, it's just incredible. So I know I'm on, like, that's my path,
Absolutely.
but I can't hide. I can't hide from it. And so
Right.
the next time, when I have that conversation with somebody and somebody says, "What do you do?" We're like, "I'm an evidential medium." And they'll be like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Well, talk to dead people."
I
That
talk to
sounds
dead people.
wild, but it's the truth. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's the
And
truth.
and that's the thing. I think, again, everyone is going to receive you at where they're at.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't really reflect on us. It's and that was a hard thing for me. I always I wanted everyone to like me, and if they didn't, it had to be me. Like I
Mm.
did something wrong, and that comes from trauma, and that comes from being raised a specific way, and and being told specific things. But that was hard for me to I mean, probably 10 years ago, I started my blog, and putting that first blog post out was I was sweating. I was nauseous. Who did I think I was? I wasn't Michelle Obama putting something out there. I was just this regular person, but it was so freeing. And then doing my first podcast episode, same thing. It was so freeing for me. And it
Yeah.
was so much no, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then people validating it for me. Not that I needed the validation, but that it resonated with somebody. And that was always my thing and even when I taught, it was if I reach one child, then it's all worth it,
Yeah.
and same if I've reached one listener who said, man, I get that. I felt that, or I never put it out there that way or put the two together. But now that I listened to that, it resonated. It's scary. And that was, I started this season of Yes a few years
Mhm.
back, and saying yes to things that scared me.
Yeah.
Right. And it's been so freeing. My kids are so like free and unapologetic and not scared of anything, which is wild. And I'm scared of everything. But I'm trying to step into things that scare
Yeah.
me, and go, no, this is what I'm meant to do. And this is what I want to do. And if
Yeah.
somebody doesn't like it, too bad.
Yeah. That's one of the things I say is like, if you're scared of it, go do that.
Yes.
Whatever you're scared of, go do that thing.
Yeah.
Because it's just so freeing to be able to step into what you want to be, do, become, you know what I mean? And if you love it, you love it. If you try it and you hate it and you're like, I don't want to do that anymore, well, whatever. You've now taken off such a weight, off your shoulders by just stepping forward and doing what is your truth.
Right. Exactly. And I think that that's a huge thing is do things that scare you, and you don't have to do it again. If it didn't work for you, or if
Right.
it wasn't what was supposed to be, or even if it scared you beyond, you can say, hey, I checked that off. I
Yeah.
did it. I don't have to do it again. But you may also be stepping into something that is amazing
Yeah.
and that opens you up to bigger things. And that's kind of what happened to me in the fall when I just took a class that I was like, oh, I just want to see what that's about and how it's going to work, which led me to teaching my own class next month and really pushed me to start editing this book and getting it out there. Because it was my own fear. I was holding myself back. Nobody
Yeah.
else was holding me back.
Right.
So just being stepping into your truth and feeling confident in yourself and feeling like, I know this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. We can't deny ourselves. You can't deny yourself these things. And I'm glad that more younger women are seeing this and realizing this at a younger age.
At a younger
Instead
age.
of waiting until I'm 50 to go do it, So
Yeah. I'm glad I finally got
Yeah.
there, but I say to my nieces or my nephews, we'll talk about stuff and I'm just like, wow, I'm so glad that you've done the work and you
Yeah.
got there and you're getting there at such a young age, and you're standing in your truth and knowing you don't need anyone else to validate you, because I
Yep.
always had other people validate me. And now I'm just no, I'm validating myself.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that that's a big part of people talking about everything, like that's where social media and, these platforms are a good thing because people
Mhm.
use it to speak their truth and to talk
Yeah.
about things that we never would talk about,
Yes.
on our 20s. And people are changing lives because they're
Mhm.
talking about the scary things.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I
Yeah.
love
That's where we can learn from this generation, right?
it.
Because they, and I say it with my kids, I look at my kids and I'm in awe every day. And even my grandkids, I'm like, they're wild. Like they're
Mhm.
so like, I
Yeah.
don't care. Like, live in that childhood abandonment,
Yep. And
childhood abandonment.
I make sure to teach my girls the same too. So I get to instill that into them, uh, and how I speak to them and the beliefs that they're going to grow up with, because I know about that mindset. I know about words creating your reality. I know
Right.
about, what your parents tell you is what you believe, And
Right.
so even when it comes down to like money and things like that, I choose my words so wisely, so that they hopefully have less hangups and limiting beliefs than I did growing up. I mean, I
Oh,
can
for
only do so
sure.
much, but at least I'm able to be like aware of these things so that I could guide them to do, the same and better.
Oh, for sure. And I think that that's probably the gift of being able to have your kids later on in your life. Because
Mm.
I joke with my oldest son, and I say, you were kind of the practice. Like, sorry, we made mistakes and then we
Right.
figured it out. I mean, what did I know? I was 19. Like, I didn't even know myself. Like,
Yeah.
it took me 20 some odd years to kind of figure out who I was and be comfortable in that. But also, I think they tell me that no, they kind of learned from the mistakes, but also in me owning things and where our parents may never have apologized to us for a behavior,
Mm.
and we would never hear, sorry that I spoke to you in that way, or sorry that that
Yeah.
came off that way. I had no problem, like maybe not in the moment, but retrospectively looking
Oh
back
yeah.
and going, I messed up,
Yeah.
like I gotta own that. And even to this day, therapy is a wonderful thing. I'll, you know, not have a realization, but like look at a situation in a very different light than I would have 20 some odd years ago.
Oh yeah.
I'll call them or text them and they're just like, it's fine. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even remember that. And I'm like, well, I do. And
Yeah.
what I would have done better is this.
Mm.
Or, looking at my son who has a daughter who's very strong willed and saying, listen, if I had known better, I would have done better in this area.
Yeah.
So don't stifle her, strong will, rein it in maybe a little bit. And it's, don't let her be disrespectful, but also don't look at it as a challenge. Cause I think
Mm.
that that's where, we as parents can take that moment and say, okay, listen, I messed up. I can reflect back on that, um, but I was young, so I didn't know. Um, but they're pretty good kids. So I think we did all right. I think we did okay. I think so. Um, but I look at things very differently than I did. So had them now or in my 40s, I would have done things so differently, you
Yeah.
know? Because I'm not the same person than I was then.
Agree. Yes. I mean, I only had my kids at 42 and 45. So again, I understand it's just like there's even in the years from Luna and Ayla, who are only 2 years apart, the parenting is completely different,
Completely different.
you know.
But also, I feel like your kids come to you when they're supposed to come to you, and however
Oh,
they're
well,
supposed
there's
to come
that
to you.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
We could talk about that for
This
days.
is all made, this is all exactly how it's supposed to be. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that that's, yeah, I think that that's a beautiful way to like look at that. What I would love to know, and maybe we can use this kind of as our closer.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm going to give you guys some information about Nancy and where to find her. But what advice would you give to any of the listeners listening who might be struggling with speaking their truth and, being fully themselves and maybe are stuck not being able to step into their purpose because of their own fears, their own beliefs, or
Yeah.
other people's beliefs in what that purpose is supposed to look like.
I think one of the first things that comes to mind is to really sit down and ask yourself, if I don't do this, if I don't be authentic and truthful, how will that affect the rest of my life? How will that affect my relationships, my working, my whatever, all these different factors in your life?
Right.
If you don't move forward, if you don't claim what you've been given or what you believe in or what you want to do, whether it's psychic abilities or crocheting little animals, it doesn't matter what it
Right.
is. There is always going to be a naysayer. There's always going to be somebody that's like, oh, why would you do that for?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how could you do that? Oh, that's not real.
Right.
That's always going to exist. There's always going to be some bitter people or people that just don't have that in them to be able to take a step like that, to take a leap like that. So thinking about, if I don't do this, what does that mean for me? And I think you see, like, after you start looking at those things and you look at your own happiness and your own joy and your own fulfillment, what will it do? What will it do to your body? What will it do to your emotions and spirit if you held back on that leap or telling your truth? And I think that will really say a lot. You know what I mean? And be willing, like me. Yes, maybe I lost a couple of people, but look at all the people that I've gained.
Right.
Look at how my life, the joy inside of me when I'm like, oh my God, that was such an incredible session. Even to this day, 9 years later, I will do all my sessions over Zoom. And I go run up to my husband who's in his office. I'm like, honey, you won't believe the session I just had.
Right.
And I feel this rush of joy, you know what I mean? Or someone making their first sale on their first crystal or jewelry. It's incredible. And so don't not do what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? Think about all what you will lose if you don't. And I guarantee you it's going to be more than the couple of things, you know what I mean? And you get to prove them wrong too.
That's the other thing, right? Isn't it great? No, but I mean, again, I think this is kind of, important to say is, I mean, I think it is a little bit of like, I'm going to do it even in spite of you believing that I can do it.
Yes.
And, for me, it's my writing and it's this podcast. And, my writing more than anything was always the secret of 1,000 journals that live all over the house and everywhere you can look and find. But it was something that saved me in a very real way. But also my words will resonate with other people, and maybe not that person, or maybe the people who said, no, you can't do that. But it does feel good. Yeah. It does feel good when you know that you're doing something that is your calling and your purpose, but also that helps other people. Because isn't that what life is all about? That we give like a hand up and that we're able to, leave something good in the world and help other people.
Yeah, it's a ripple. You have to think about like that ripple of joy. And when you change, when you do your thing, you're also changing other people's lives too. You're also giving another woman to be like, you know what? I should probably do this, because regret weighs heavy. Regret weighs so heavy. And thinking about that, of having regrets and then it being too late that I should have done this. You don't want that feeling.
No, you never want to leave. No, you never want to leave this world and go, I wish I had done.
Right.
And that's something I say to my kids, and they are stepping into beautiful and amazing things in their adult life. And they do way scarier things and things that are so wild and that I would never do. But it's their calling and their purpose. And they're continuing to, pass that along to their kids who are littles. But I feel like in my going into my 52nd year of life, I have never felt more alive. I have never felt more like what I'm doing is the right thing for me. And that I legitimately believe and know that it's going to help someone out there, and that that's what I was supposed to be doing. But also I loved all the things that I got to do in my first life, I'll call it, like I was a mom and I was, a teacher, and I got to help people in a different way. And now, it's my time.
It's our time.
It's our time. That's what I love. That's what I love. I was like so grateful to like get to meet you finally in person, right? Because and sit down and talk to you. And I feel like we have such similar, mindsets and beliefs. And it was great to just sit over a cup of tea and coffee and just kind of like vibe in a different way, like a physical vibe. Like you said, you're like, sometimes you're just like, can people be closer so that I can meet them in person? Well, I'm very close now. So even though we're on, a video call here, we're close. So we can always meet up now. Yes. This is wonderful. I'm super grateful that you took time out of your schedule to talk about, this in a bigger way, and, to be able to not tell people, but to be able to explain to people that, purpose is real, and, our inner truth is real, and it doesn't have to live inside of us, right? That it's something we can talk about and step into, and that it can be really beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Well, let me give you guys some information about Nancy Weiss. You can find Nancy on Instagram at Nancy Weiss Intuitive. And you can also check out her YouTube podcast, which I wish I had mentioned in the beginning, but I'm going to be putting all this information into the description when this episode drops in February. And it is called Coffee, and that's CAWFEE for those people who are from New England, like us originally from up north. Coffee, you got to say it right, Coffee with Spirit. And you can also book your Spirit Baby session online, and I will put that information into the description because I feel like what Nancy is doing is amazing and it's beautiful. And we need more of that in this world, and people supporting people's dreams, but also being able to connect with things and people that we're supposed to connect with. If that's in your heart, I hope you will go and check out Nancy on Instagram or on her podcast on YouTube, Coffee with Spirit. And I want to thank you all for listening to the All in My Head podcast. I'm Jenny. Until next time.
Let's go.